Hello artists, Mrs. Keitel here. I've got a couple different cameras going on right now, so bear with me. I'm trying out one of my nicer cameras opposed to our ladybug that we have here in the classroom. But our goal for today is to really see how we're going to continue in on our details and finishing up our miniature paintings, our 6x6 Who I Am paintings. Now, today what I want you all to focus on are some of those details that you're going to incorporate. A lot of the time, we want to draw our details, but when we're using watercolors, it's a nice opportunity for us to include textures and line work and details with our paint rather than that pencil. So that's what I would like to do today. I actually brought from home my favorite hot sauce, and this is the hot sauce that I have in my image with my pho, so I wanted to make sure that I had my visual. If I didn't have something to bring from home, obviously I can Google it, but anyway, it's fun to have the actual item. That's kind of the purpose of when we did our still lifes too, having items that are important to us or meaningful to us, so that carries over into our paintings as well. Now, I'm going to go ahead and swap-a-do this little camera here, and then I've got to flip it around so you have the right view. But I've got a couple things here. I have a sketch that I intend to paint that has no paint on our paper so far. So you can see the difference between just our plain paper and then also one layer. I did do a little wet on wet here, so I've got kind of this gray look for steam coming up from my bowl of pho. But I have this really plain bottle here for my hot sauce, and then this spoon as well is just kind of dull. Pretty flat. So my goal for today is to start adding in some of those details. I'm using a paint that I ordered off of Amazon. This is Faber-Castell. This is a pretty expensive watercolor compared to some of the ones that we use. Guys and gals, peeps, any kind of watercolors that we use are perfect, okay? We've come to learn that watercolors, regardless of the price, are all going to have really similar pigments and are going to have the same kind of longevity within the work. So please don't feel like you need a fancy dancy kind. I just really like these. It has a different color scale, and I can also pop these out when I might need to replace one. So from a teacher's perspective, from someone who uses watercolors a lot, this was worth my investment. But you can also find a set of watercolors for 99 cents, $2 at the dollar store. Crayola, just as good. Okay, I'm going to do a little less chatting and get a little more painting done here. Now, I know for sure I want to add some details, but I'm going to wait for these smaller details. I'm going to focus on this bowl, and I want to do a floral design, but I want to keep it really simple. So I'm going to start off by hydrating the colors that I need. I want to have kind of a vine, so I'm going to do some darker and some lighter green, and then I want to include also just some really simple flowers by using little dots and circles. So I'm going to get a little magenta here, a little orange, just to hydrate and get ready those colors that I'd like. Now my paper is completely dry, and this is how I want it to be for these flowers, because I don't want my water and my pigment to spread around. I want it to be really specific to where I'm placing my brush. So I'm going to start off with some of this lighter green. And I'm thinking of just doing like a little vine. So I'm bringing it across. This green is really light, so I'm going to go back into my paint to get some more pigment. And I will add that pigment onto my water spots already. I'm going to have it go all the way across. I'm going to clean my brush and move into my darker value of green here, and I'm just going to take that dot of that darker value on my brush and tap it into some of my spots where there's a little more water on my paper. I'm going to clean my brush again, and then I'm just going to gently kind of move that around. It's going to add a drop shadow to the vine. It's going to add another value, which is going to give it a little bit more realism, a little more depth. And now I'm going to let this chill a minute and let it dry before I come back in to do my flowers. What I can do, though, while I'm here, is start thinking about some of my shadows and how I want to build depth and values within my background and in my paint. So I have these nice, lovely white spots that I kept on my paper that I wanted to give that depth, but now around my bowl and my items, I want to add a little bit more of a shadow. So I'm actually going to do a little mixing. And since I have this blue background, I'm going to get a color that is a little bit more blue than black for my shadows. I'm actually going to make a little mixture here where I have a little bit of black and I'm going to bring my blue into it until I get to that color I like. And I recommend for all of my students, always do a little tester sheet first, especially when you want something subtle. You just want to make sure it's not too dark or a pigment that you're not looking for. You can always dab it off of your paper, but it just prevents you from having those moments where you're not too happy if you can do a tester first. Okay, now I'm going to add this in. This is going to add another value here. This is going to show us that shadow again, and this is going to come down onto my, around my items and onto my table. I do have a napkin here, but that's not going to stop us from having that little drop shadow. So I'm going to kind of overlap on there. And this is just giving me some time to work while my center is drying for my flowers. Now this is dried up pretty quickly. It should only take a couple minutes if you didn't get your paper completely saturated. Now I'm going to come in with a little bit of my magenta, and on some of the high points of this vine, I'm just going to add in some dots. Now if you see some blending happening that you're not too keen of, like this, like here, like so, I'm not super happy with that. So that means I need to let my paper dry a second. And if I'm really, really not happy with it, then I just take a little paper towel. I like to make my paper towels into like a point because I don't want to smush the color all the way around. I want to just soak it up. I'm going to dab where I want to soak it up. And then that almost kind of gives you a little base to start from again. So, a little technique there just to get any paint off that you didn't really need all of or you're not too happy with. All right. So I've got my details going here. While I have some of this magenta on my brush, I'm going to add a little on the edges here of my bottle just to give a little pop, a little shadow there. My paper was still wet, so again, I had a little spot I wasn't too happy with, so I just got a little water and smoothed it out. But as you can see, as we move along, we're just going to add a little bit more each time until we build up our colors and get our paintings to where we would like them to be. Have a great time working. If you have any questions, let me know. As always, happy painting!